What happens when a puppet starts pulling on its own strings? When the marionette believes it has become the puppet master? Today we're diving deep into a story that reveals the brutal mechanics of modern imperialism and why Vladimir Zelensky, once the West's golden boy, may now be facing the ultimate corporate restructuring, his own replacement. Recent intelligence reports suggest that Western officials are actively discussing replacing Zelensky with former military chief Valery Zaluzhny. But this isn't just palace intrigue. It's a textbook example of how imperial powers manage their client states when the clients become inconvenient. We'll explore how Zelensky's recent authoritarian crackdown trumps ultimatums. Ukraine's military desperation and mass protests have created a perfect storm that may end his presidency. More importantly, we'll examine what this reveals about the true nature of Western support for Ukraine. According to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, Western and Ukrainian officials recently held a clandestine meeting at an undisclosed Alpine resort. The attendees, USA and UK officials, alongside key Ukrainian power brokers including Zelensky's top aide Andriy Yermak, military intelligence chief Kirill Budanov, and crucially Valery Zaluzhny, currently serving as Ukraine's ambassador to the UK. The conclusion of this shadow conference, that it is high time for Zelensky to be replaced. With this change being deemed a key condition for resetting Kiev's relations with the West and continuing Western military aid, Zaluzhny isn't just any replacement candidate. He's Ukraine's former commander-in-chief from 2021 to 2024. He commands high approval ratings and would likely defeat Zelensky in any legitimate election. More importantly, he represents what Western handlers prefer, a military strongman who understands chain of command. Perhaps most telling is how Yermak, Zelensky's own chief of staff, supposedly saluted the replacement plan, securing promises to keep his position under new management. This reveals the cold pragmatism of Ukraine's political class, where loyalty flows not to leaders or nations, but to Western paymasters. This isn't unprecedented. It's from NGO Dinh Diem in South Vietnam to countless Latin American strongmen. The United States has a long history of disposing of inconvenient allies. The method is always the same: private meetings, assurances to key players, and the swift execution of regime change. Donald Trump has compressed his Ukraine peace deadline from 50 days to just 10 days, threatening 100% tariffs on Russian trading partners and sweeping secondary sanctions. But here's what mainstream media won't tell you. This isn't really about pressuring Russia. It's about creating an impossible situation for Zelensky. Think about Zelensky's position. He's built his entire political identity on never compromising with Russia, on fighting to the last Ukrainian. Trump's ultimatum forces him into a corner. Either accept a peace deal that destroys his domestic credibility, or refuse and lose Western support entirely. Moscow's response has been masterful. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov noted they've taken into account Trump's statements while emphasizing Russia remains committed to the peace process, but will continue military operations to secure their interests. This puts the ball squarely in Ukraine's court, while making Russia appear reasonable. When Senator Lindsey Graham tried to pressure Russia to get to the peace table, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev delivered a brutal response. It's not for you or Trump to dictate when to get at the peace table. This represents a fundamental shift. Russia is no longer accepting the role of junior partner in negotiations. Trump's ultimatums reveal a crucial weakness in American imperial strategy: the inability to deliver on threats when adversaries call their bluff. Each failed ultimatum diminishes American credibility and exposes the limits of economic warfare against resource-rich nations like Russia. Ukraine has now authorized recruiting men over 64 military service. Let that sink in. A country supposedly winning a war is now enlisting grandfathers. This isn't strategic planning. It's demographic desperation masquerading as policy. Ukraine's draft campaign has devolved into something resembling press gangs. Reports of beatings, street detentions, and extortion by conscription officers circulate widely. When Kiev dismisses these as Russian propaganda, they're gaslighting their own population about their lived experiences. Over 213,000 registered cases of desertion tell the real story of Ukrainian military morale. Soldiers aren't abandoning their posts because of Russian propaganda. They're fleeing widespread corruption. Commanders stealing combat pay and being sent into hopeless situations. Kiev's voluntary recruitment campaign targeting 18 to 24-year-olds has clearly failed, necessitating the desperate expansion to pensioners. When you can't convince young people to fight for their supposed freedom, you're admitting your cause lacks popular support. Russian officials accurately describe Western strategy as fighting until the last Ukrainian. This demographic destruction isn't a bug in Western planning, it's a feature. A weakened Ukraine becomes more dependent on Western support and less capable of independent action. Zelensky's recent attack on Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau (NABU) and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office (SAPO) represents the final consolidation of authoritarian power. These agencies, established in 2015 under Western pressure, were meant to combat high-level corruption. Here's the key insight most miss. NABU and SAPO weren't just anti-corruption agencies. They were instruments of Western control. Half of NABU's selection commission consists of international representatives. When Zelensky attacked these agencies, he was attacking Western oversight mechanisms. NABU was investigating Zelensky's inner circle, including former Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Chernyshov, presidential aide Rostislav Sherma, and media executive Timur Mindich, Zelensky's personal friend and co-owner of Studio Kvartal 95. When your anti-corruption agency starts investigating your corruption, the solution is obvious. Eliminate the agency. Ukraine's security service conducted aggressive raids on NAP personnel, using armed groups to force people to the ground without presenting search warrants. This isn't law enforcement, it's state terrorism designed to intimidate investigators. Intelligence suggests Yermak may have advised Zelensky to push the controversial anti-corruption law, knowing it would undermine his international image and provide justification for Western partners to seek his removal. True, this represents the ultimate betrayal, orchestrating your boss's downfall while appearing loyal. For the first time since 2022, Ukraine is witnessing large-scale political protests. Demonstrators in Kiev, Lviv, Kharkov, and Odessa chant Zelensky is the devil, and no to corruption and power. Many draw parallels to the 2013 Euromaidan that ousted Viktor Yanukovych. Ukrainian media reports suggest protests may proceed in 3 phases. First, repeal all changes to anti-corruption laws. Second, demand Yermak's resignation and potentially criminal charges. Third, present Zelensky with an ultimatum to become a ceremonial general or resign entirely. Opposition forces are coalescing around the protests. Even typically pro-government media outlets owned by oligarch Igor Kolomoisky have extensively covered the demonstrations. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko and his brother attended protests, along with numerous opposition lawmakers. Suddenly, Western media outlets like the Financial Times, The Economist, and The Spectator are discovering Zelensky's authoritarian slide. This coordinated shift in coverage suggests Western handlers are preparing public opinion for a leadership change. Zelensky's potential replacement follows classic imperial client-state management, and when a proxy becomes too independent, too corrupt, or too unpopular, you replace them with someone more compliant. The interests of the proxy state's population never factor into these calculations. NABU and SAPO had documented ties to the U.S. Democratic Party, as revealed in the Paul Manafort case and Hunter Biden's Burisma scandal. Zelensky's attack on these agencies represents an attempt to escape Democratic Party oversight. It's a dangerous move with Trump in power. Western warnings about Zelensky's corruption crackdown affecting Reconstruction investment reveal the true priority: ensuring Western corporations can profit from Ukraine's rebuilding. Ukrainian sovereignty was never the goal. Economic penetration was. Reports suggest the U.S. may hand the Ukraine conflict to European vassals, while installing a more controllable leader in Kiev. This represents imperial cost-cutting. Let the Europeans pay for the war, while America maintains strategic control. Ukraine's value to Western imperialism lies in its resources, agricultural land, and strategic position, not its people. Demographic destruction through war serves imperial interests by weakening any future Ukrainian independence movement. Russia's confident rejection of U.S. ultimatums signals a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. Countries with significant resources and military capabilities are no longer accepting subordinate roles in the U.S.-dominated order. Each failed ultimatum, from Iran to Russia to China, diminishes American imperial credibility. Zelensky's potential replacement won't solve this fundamental problem, it merely delays the reckoning. Russia's successful resistance to Western economic warfare has inspired other nations to pursue independent policies. The Ukraine conflict has inadvertently accelerated the formation of alternative economic and military alliances. The conflict has revealed European Union countries as American vassals rather than independent actors. Their willingness to sacrifice their own economic interests for U.S. strategic goals demonstrates the limits of their sovereignty. We're witnessing the birth of a genuinely multipolar world order. The unipolar moment following the Soviet collapse is ending. And proxy conflicts like Ukraine represent the birth pangs of this new reality. Zelensky's story illustrates the fundamental impossibility of being an imperial puppet while maintaining genuine independence. The moment he tried to escape Western control mechanisms, he signed his own political death warrant. Countries worldwide should study Ukraine's tragedy carefully. This is what happens when you allow foreign powers to establish anti-corruption agencies, civil society organizations, and other control mechanisms in your territory. While elites play their power games, ordinary Ukrainians suffered demographic destruction, economic collapse, and social disintegration. They've been sacrificed on the altar of geopolitical competition between imperial powers. Whether Zelensky survives or falls, the fundamental dynamic won't change. Ukraine will remain a battlefield for great power competition until it finds a way to assert genuine neutrality and independence. The potential replacement of Zelensky reveals the true nature of contemporary imperialism: sophisticated, bureaucratic, and utterly ruthless in its pursuit of global dominance. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward resisting them. What do you think? Is Zelensky's replacement inevitable? Or can he survive this perfect storm of Western pressure, domestic unrest, and military failure? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more anti-imperialist analysis of global events.